Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hmm. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
I'm having difficult, but I'm getting straight. I hit the cord and then unplugged me. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah. Waiting for the host. It is 7 a.m. Good morning. Our host is having technical difficulties, so hello. Hey, Steven, how you doing?
Pretty good yourself?
I'm pretty good. My co-host is having some technical difficulties, so I can't even start until she gets on.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Just loading now.
Wow. You're ridiculous. Okay. So how's everything been? You guys still working from home?
Yeah, we're still working from home, still busy, busy.
It
Uh
seems like even more busy since COVID.
Yeah, that as well as trying to work with home with no childcare. So,
Oh wow.
so
Yeah.
that has caused early mornings or late nights, but it's a blessing to be able to have that nurturing time with my
Hmm.
son. So,
Well, that's good. I think it's going to be difficult for people to go back to work
hmm
the
yeah,
way things were. I just think it's going to be difficult for sure.
most
Um,
definitely.
Plus, if everything doesn't move at the same time, like childcare opens, it's just not going to be with like a real thing.
That and the anxiety of going back
Yeah.
without knowing if there's going to be a second wave or a third wave, or as we see throughout the majority of the country,
Yeah.
just
Hey,
you know,
Shakita, good morning.
Good
you
morning.
I haven't done my live stream yet. I haven't pressed the button. So my co-host is having technical difficulties.
Okay.
I could just strangle her, but um,
You look nice
well,
early this morning.
early this morning. Thank you so much. I've been up since 5. They always say whatever is going to go wrong, if it can go wrong, it will.
It will.
It will absolutely go wrong.
Yeah.
But what you gonna do? At least I know for sure with this podcast, like I'm just learning the whole podcast world, but we're coupling it with Zoom. You could do a live stream at Zoom and on Facebook, but the podcast itself, I think you just kind of upload it once it's done.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. I'm still learning that, but I can't call her no more. I don't call her 4 times. She's so ridiculous. I'm gonna put her on blast when she come in here. But thank you for joining. Um, let's see who else is in here. We'll probably get started in a minute. She's just gonna have to kind of join on because I do want to record, and we only have this 1 hour. Um, hmm. Okay, let's see. Let me go live mode. So that's what I will do. Hold on, you guys. Okay, let's go live. I think I'm gonna meet you. Um, let's see. Go live. Where's the title? Oh. I can share my screen. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to the Can I Live podcast. I am your host, R.W. Jones, and I am very excited to be here with you today. I'm trying to share my screen so you guys can see my presentation. Let's see. Good morning. How do you do the presentation? Okay, let's share my screen. So today we are talking about the hoax behind the affordable housing crisis. And so, you know, if you guys have read What Can I Live is all about in this podcast, it really is to, you know, expose a certain level of truth, and change the narrative. So most of us, we know that affordable housing is a crisis. It says it's a crisis throughout the United States. And what we don't know is maybe there really isn't an affordable housing crisis per se. So this presentation really is just to show you and allude to you, what really are driving the numbers and what really is our problem, because certainly it's not an affordable housing problem. So the definition of a hoax is a falsehood deliberately fabricated to masquerade as the truth. And so that's what we want to unveil here within this podcast, the hoax behind this affordable housing crisis. And so what is housing? Let's just talk about that. The first part is, what is housing? And we believe that the earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof, everything in the earth, it belongs to our creator. You, whatever you want to call your creator, but the earth was given to us to have dominion, to dominate, to be able to live without burden, without stress. And so what is housing? And so housing, if you really look at the brass tacks of what makes up housing, you're looking really at some three basic core ingredients. You're looking at land, you're looking at labor, and you're looking at resources. And when you're talking land, labor, resources, what you're really saying, okay, land, you're talking private, public. With land, you're talking, if it's public land, most likely it's going to be owned by a government entity, a state, a city, local municipality. If it's public property, of course, it's going to be owned by a private person. And the government tries not to tell private people what they can and cannot do with their property. Hence why it's called private, and they get to do what they want to do. Labor, you're looking at your excavators, your engineers, your technicians, your architectures. You're looking at all of those individuals that actually do the work of the housing. And then resources, let's see, I don't know what just happened. Okay, I see Dr. Muktari here. Hey, Kim, can you hear me? Okay. So in your resources, you're actually talking about, cement, nails, rocks, trees, lumber. You're talking about things from the earth, whether it's for solar panels, you're talking sun. Windmill, you're talking wind. You're talking rocks for cement, sand, steel, rocks, minerals. You're talking natural ingredients, natural resources that come from the earth. So I want you to look and make sure that, let's see, I think I stopped sharing my screen. As you are looking at, what housing is, these are the main ingredients of what it means to create housing. You need land, you need labor, and you need resources. So are we then saying, let's see, are we then saying that there is not enough of these resources? There's not enough land, labor, and resources? Because then I can understand if there were no more trees. I can understand if people just stopped working. And then I can understand if there was a water drought, there were no rocks, there were no wind, then we would be lacking the ingredients to create housing. And let's take the word affordable, I think, because that's how people get hung up. The truth of the matter is, when you drive out to your day, going to work or going to the store, there's one thing you will see. You will see housing being developed. So you see cranes in the sky. They're not necessarily building stadiums. They're not building, how do you call, they're not building, what do they call those things? Not stadiums, but hotels. Now, some people might be, you might see a couple of hotels, but what's really happening and what's really going on and being built right now are luxury apartments. You see housing being built. You see the signs coming, you know, luxury or lavish or whatever name that they call it. That's what you're seeing. So let's make it clear that it's not the housing that is shortage. It's the type of housing that will cater to a specific type of income. And so let's talk about that. So in our part two, we want to discuss the current affordable housing model. And so there is a saying by Charles Darwin: if the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, then great is our sin. And we're just going to kind of dive in a little deep. And I don't know, Kim, can you talk now? Because thank you for joining us. Thank you
Thank you for having me, Raquel. Thank you.
for gracing us with
Can
your
I
presence.
live? Yeah, it's an honor to be with you all this morning. This is one of America's most devastating issues over so many years. And of course, I think, Raquel, you're dealing with this from a very analytical standpoint. Is this really about housing versus are we catering to a population of certain people with a certain class, with a certain income? And we're really not talking about housing then anymore. We're talking about classism.
Right.
And everything that goes along with classism. And then if classism is the true topic, then we have to ask ourselves, how do we end up in these classes? Because I'm sure most of us did not wake up overnight and say, hey, I would like to be dropped off into this class. I woke up and I found myself a part of this European style of classism, and hey, I choose this one. So of course we're looking at, are we talking about choice, or are we talking about disenfranchisement over time? And the breakdown of what happens to a people when you start doing the Jenga, when you start pulling resources, when you start the injustices that go along with not having access, not having collateral, not having upfront monies, and then pushing populations into survival. So now I have to take the interest loans that are predatory, which messes up or damages the credit over time. And then when it's time for you to go and purchase a home or purchase things that are long lasting, you've already made yourself a target for predatory lending. I mean, and so, most people say what you don't know would hurt you, but no, what you don't know could kill you. And so they are keeping some of that information and a lot of that education away from our people. Therefore, we by default make ourselves ineligible for some of the luxuries of America.
And so you said something important. You said, well, if we're not then talking about housing, because what I just basically showed you was what housing is. It's labor, it's land, it's resources at its finest. If you boiled it down to its most common denominator, its most core ingredients, at the end of the day, you can't build housing without land, labor, and resources. And so what Kim, that was really good, what you alluded to, is because I don't think that we understand, or sometimes the narrative is so subtle, we kind of just play along, we kind of just walk right into it, and we're not realizing what we're actually walking into. And I want to make sure we don't do anything else. Let this podcast, as our official launch, we're excited. We're still working out some technical difficulties, but I want to make sure that at the end of the day, we can at least peel back enough layers to judge a matter based on what it really, really is. It's not a lack of affordable housing. We have enough resources in the earth to provide housing for families.
Absolutely.
We have that. We have enough trees for lumber. We have enough rock, steel, sand for cement, nails. We have enough sun for solar. We have enough wind for wind power. We have enough of the things that we need. So then, here, can you see this presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So our current model, we're going to use actually an example from the local DC Housing Authority here in Washington, DC. This is pretty much the template that many housing authorities throughout the United States use. So right now, public housing is being privatized. Call it what you want. It is a privatization model. Whereas, housing before it was against the law to take debt out on federal property. Now you can take debt out, what they call on your equity. And that calls for private investments to come in to make the needful capital improvements that's needed. So first of all, the fact that public housing has been disinvested for over the last, 50 some odd years is a crime, because what I want us to do is pull it back, because most of us are blame Ben Carson, blame HUD, when really your congressional representatives who are in Congress, the fact that they did not appropriate the funds for the capital improvements, that tells you right there that that's a problem. So maybe when you go to vote and you're voting in these individuals, they really might not have your best interests at heart at all, because they're not even seeing to it that your housing is decent, safe, and affordable. And as of right now, with this new RAD demonstration, it's no longer going to be those three things. Well, I'm not going to say it's not going to be, but what happens is it's the heist. The affordable housing is now going, public land property is now going into the hand of private developers. And so here's just some numbers. So let's just look at some quick numbers. In a basic, development deal, you're going to have usually some building acquisition, some land acquisition costs, sometimes building acquisitions. You'll have some hard costs, your hard labor, your materials. You'll have your soft costs, which is probably like your engineers, your architects, the legal, the accounting, all of the administration that goes into it. You also have your developer fees. Now, this is the cost of one community, one project. And as you can see, the total development cost is about $46 million. The development fee right there, just for that one project, is almost $5 million. And so I'm like, well, maybe I needed to be a developer. And so at the end of the day,
You a developer? Okay.
I mean, if I put it like this, we will be a developer, but there is a development. You got to look at, when you're looking at right here, the per course, the per unit cost per unit. That means if you have a high rise and there's 200 apartments in that building, per doorknob, you're talking $418,000 per doorknob.
Right.
Then you say, well, that no wonder it can't be affordable. So what was that? Oh, I just heard something. So no wonder it couldn't be affordable. Now, how they come down here, this is how they plan to pay for it. So you have these low income housing tax credits, mortgage, they got bonds, they got notes, but at the end of the day, there's a gap of $8 million that they have to meet. But this is just for one property, okay? And so if you see these numbers, $5 million is going right to the developer's fee. And all of those hard costs and soft costs, that's $7 million. That's $31 million. By all means, give the man what the Bible says, that a man is worthy of his wage. I'm not saying that people should not get paid. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, at this rate, at $418,000 per door, maybe again, they're saying that these are the costs. So let's talk about what that really is. What also happens that goes into the cost that you don't see is every family has to be relocated, particularly if someone is living in these occupied units right now, they have to be relocated. That housing authority or that community development corporation or whoever is developing the property, if they're having someone live in that property, they're going to have to request from HUD monies to provide Section 8 vouchers. And these vouchers, what they call, I believe, they're transferable vouchers. These individuals can move anywhere in the United States with their voucher.
The issue that we're having, as you can see, I know in DC, they plan to move about 400 families a year. But the issue that we're having with the vouchers is people are not taking the vouchers. Families are not able to, from low income, move into higher opportunity areas or higher, what they call opportunity zones or zip codes. So they have to kind of stay in these high impoverished, segregated communities with their quote voucher. Now, hence, I don't know if you know, but you can actually, if you have a voucher out there in voucher land, you can actually purchase a home with your Section 8 voucher. But many people are not even going to tell you that. And that's probably a topic for a whole nother conversation. But I do want us, because I'm trying to tee it up for our next little episode here, to show you that it's not an affordable housing crisis we have. And in this model coming up, we're going to actually show you what type of crisis we have, because it's not an affordable housing crisis. Oh, there is a crisis by all means, but it's not an affordable housing crisis. And so I know, Kim, that's probably some of the technical stuff behind the public housing, but I want us to go really quick into this no affordable housing shortage. And so what I'm going to do right now, there's this scripture, you guys have heard it, that it says, how can you love God, which you never see, but your brother who you have and see every day, you do not love? So I doubt y'all love God if you don't love your brothers. So there's a website out there called HUD Home Store. And in HUD Home Store, you can literally physically go to, let me see, I think I linked it. So if I went to HUDHomestore.com, I'm almost afraid to link it and go back. So I'm gonna stop sharing this screen, and then I'm gonna share this screen that I'm having right here. Share this one, so that you can actually see the HUD Home Store. So let's just pick on a city. We're gonna go to Maryland. And I'm just going to put search all. Okay, Maryland was already up. And I'm going to therefore say, okay, well, here's some housing, 43,127. This seems like, for the most part, affordable housing. Let's see, this is $67,000. Let's see if I go to the next page. I think they got 2 to 3 pages. Now, HUD owns these homes. Most of these homes are HUD homes that they actually own. And so if we actually had to go into one of these properties, we will actually see the details of that property. You can actually see the inside of the property. You probably can gauge roughly what it would cost to redevelop it, but you're definitely gonna have to go there, look at the bone structure, to see what type of infrastructure is needed. There's a listing price of $55,000. So let's go here, because I'm going to share this next screen. I got so many screens that I'm sharing. So as you can see, I'm going to click on it again. Let's go here. Okay, so we talked about the Maryland houses, and here's where I don't understand. And this is where I want to show you that we got a whole nother different type of issue here. And so if you have housing authorities moving families out, and you have them giving families Section 8 vouchers, but no one is tapping into the HUD inventory themselves, not even HUD. So HUD themselves are not even saying, hey, voucher holders, you can come and move into our properties, or let's develop our own properties so we can put these families in. Because the truth of the matter is, if that family does not find a home within a certain amount of time, they will have to give back that voucher and or move into something else that housing authority has. So you actually got this big promise to move out of public housing into this new place that never really existed. Now, some exist, but a lot does not. And then you wind up back into these crime-riddled, unsafe, deplorable conditions. And now you're in a community that has no vouchers coming up. So, most moms, they're like, finding a house is very stressful. So some of them, I don't know where or how they're advocating and for what. But at the end of the day, HUD in itself has inventory that is available. And I don't see why in this local jurisdiction, if Maryland and Virginia, if North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, If they're going through a redevelopment plan, why not at least turn to the HUD home inventory themselves, put the moms in the houses with the vouchers? At least that's some type of housing that can help towards the overall shortage, right? Right. So here's the issue, sweetheart. We don't have an affordable housing crisis. What we have is a love. It's a love crisis. And so I want that to kind of sink in, because some of y'all might have thought, those that are listening, oh, it was boiled down to love. Because sometimes we hear the word and it sounds so corny. It sounds so, oh, look over. Like we just gonna roll over like a little bump in the road. But that's what we have. And I know that in the word it says, you know, in those days and the end days, hearts will wax cold. But at the end of the day, I'm talking to mission-driven landlords, people that who hearts do still pump God's love, compassion, you know, mercy, kindness. Those are the people that will turn this thing around. When the enemy comes in like a flood, God lifts up a standard. And so what we're going to go in, not right this second, because I want to hear from you guys, is talk about, you know, when we say we don't have an affordable housing crisis, we have a love crisis. Because if I love my brother, I will not take the earth, all of its resources, and then put it in a framework. Now I'm going to extort and burden you with it. Now you have to go out and labor just to live in a house. And so I want Kimmy, Dr. McTerry, I call her Kimmy. I want Dr. McTerry to kind of weigh in on, at the simplest terms and the most common denominators, when we talk love, I love my brother, so I won't dishonor him. I won't do evil unto him. I won't lie. I won't cheat. I won't, you know, burden him. I won't do those things. And at the end of the day, we just don't love each other enough. I don't love you. That's why I don't care if you're homeless. I don't care if you live in an unsafe community. I don't care if your kids die. I don't care if they get raped in the elevator, if they get shot on the street. I don't love you. At the end of the day, I just don't love you. And so I really don't care what happens to you and your family. And, you know, for those that say, well, okay, maybe we don't have an affordable housing crisis. Maybe we do have a love. And I love my brothers and sisters. I love my fellow mankind. And so I'll do my part. What do you say, Dr. McTerry?
I think that was a fully loaded statement.
Yeah.
You talk about, you equate love and housing to be an equal crisis in America, an equal crisis. So I think you put pretty much housing on one side of the scale, and you put love on the other. And the love scale side goes down because the housing. And so it seems like to me we've forgotten the reason why we build housing. We build housing for people, not for profit. And I think that's what the exchange has become is, you know, if I can get a few who I can make a profit off of, I don't have to be concerned about the many who don't have housing. So that's where you see this accommodation for condominiums, because if I can make a lot of money off of a few, then I can leave behind the many. And how did we get to that place? And I think for America, which is a capitalist society, it does not require that you have love. It requires that you have money and value. And so I think we're playing, though we say we're a Christian nation, really what we are is a capitalist nation. And we only use Christianity when we need to be forgiven for being caught in bed with capitalism.
Now, let me ask you this about capitalism, because some people say, you know, what's wrong with capitalism? Capitalism is not good. And while I believe in a free market, what I don't believe in is obstructing one's pathway in that free market. If it's a free market, you know what I'm saying, then let it be free for everybody. Let us all run the race, you know. And but then when you start putting things to obstruct our pathways, then that becomes the wicked and unbearable thing. Absolutely. And I don't know if you can even call that capitalism. Is that what is?
It's sabotage, and really that says that you do not protect your citizens. You actually defraud, defame. You divide and you conquer your citizens to get the advantage over your. And so then you may have a Democratic Party who is constantly trying to pick up the pieces of greed, of the effects of greed.
It's greed at the end of the day. It's lust.
It's greed at the end of the
At
day.
the end
The
of the day,
damage.
it's greed.
And so instead of
Amen.
us, I think we're so busy trying to pick up the pieces of what greed has done that we never go after the greedy. We never arrest the greedy. And so
It's not against the law to be greedy. They call it, that's the spirit of capitalism. Make your way prosperous. Yay, go make as much money as you can.
And then you can have a success story. Then they propagandize your success story. You used to be in the gutter, and now look at you here. Well, who put you in the gutter? Who, were you supposed to start off in the gutter? And so now they sensationalize poverty to prosperity when it was never supposed to be that way anyway. So we basically pimped out stories just to show the come up. And the songs are from the come up. And so, the whole entire rap industry is about how I was dirty, but now I'm rich. I'm filthy rich, and I can do what I want and get where I want, and it doesn't matter. Well, that was not the design of humanity ever. That's the design of capitalism and the American way and the dream. I'm not here. God didn't send me to earth to dream about survival. That's a huge misconception about life. I was never sent here so that I can dream about being successful. When I came to earth, I was already successful. The earth needed me. We needed each other. And from there is no such thing as hunger when God provided resources.
That's right.
We shouldn't have millions of dollars. We shouldn't even have a budget called homeless or hungry. That should not even be heard of for humans.
That's right.
When the Father gave us enough, He gave us plenty. And so when we start changing this narrative of the lie, well, like you said, we don't have an affordable housing crisis. We have a heart issue, and that heart issue has allowed us to manipulate. We're really in a state of just disillusion, where we tell ourselves it's okay to be greedy. We've given ourselves a license to defraud. And then as long as you have a government who will pick you back up, you create these deficits. And I'm not saying in 100, I'm not saying in 200 people. I'm not even talking about 1,000. I'm talking about millions of people that you've defrauded, which shows you a pattern of how this thing works. In order for someone to be rich, someone has to be poor. Then you have to have a democracy. Then you have to have a party or a people who will allocate funds to get the people who were pushed in the ditch out. And once you do that, the people become so dependent upon getting pulled out that they never find a way to pull up. And then that becomes the social norm, that I cannot contend in your market, so I'll only play where there is no loss. So most people, I'm sorry?
You say you'll only play where there is no loss?
Right. So when you start disenfranchising people and they become so scared that they don't come out to play in the market because you're so ruthless, you don't play fair.
True.
Then you create you don't play fair. You change the rules, you change the trading laws, you change your DBA. One day you're this, and then the next minute you're that. You change your name, you change the way you practice, you create hedge funds, you put interest on things that are already paid for. You never pay.
Never paid. That's why you created bankruptcy.
Yeah,
But
you never pay. Okay, come on. You never pay. You found every way for you to be a crook. Really. You've actually legalized dishonesty.
yeah. You
And
said
so,
something, well, you said that, but I guess for me, my thoughts automatically goes to the type of person that does that. There is a person, or there is a person that does that, or there are people, there's a name for those people, because that's not normal behavior. I don't think that it's normal to go out and seek out ways to be destructive, obstructing other people's pathways to prosperity, being hindrance, being a roadblock or a stumbler to someone else's prosperity. That's not normal. At least if it's normal, then your father is the devil.
well, here's what I think I think as a society, we have to come to grips. Let's just talk about where we are today. We're talking about George Floyd, the injustice of George Floyd. How did we get there? But outside of George Floyd, let's talk about America's premise. The premise of America is to defraud, to rape, to pillage, to conquer. So you remember now, when they first came over, they were called conquerors. They were called explorers. And so they conquered. That is a real word, meaning that wherever they put their feet, that's how you receive the manifest destiny. As soon as you put your feet there, it was yours by any means necessary. So when you talk about that, there is no real, there is no rules of war or rules of engagement. It's whatever I want, I take and I get by any means necessary. And if that means I have to switch the laws, if that means I have to manipulate the practices, if that means I have to charge high interest to one set so they can be pushed out, all these are tactics that we're constantly trying to catch. We're constantly trying to, and we really need protection from that mindset. How do we protect ourselves from this predatory? Because that's what it is. It's predatory. It's not free market.
It's predatory. It definitely is predatory. And I want people to understand that it's that same mindset, that same thought that is feeding these narratives that we just haphazardly get up one day and start repeating ourselves and start having conversations in our own private networks. And then you have people out here who are, quote, fighting for affordable housing. I mean, I know myself, I would consider myself of an advocate and fighter for affordable housing until I realized what I was actually fighting. And then I thought,
Absolutely.
How can I fight that? How can I fight what's in your heart? How can I do that? Unless, which is in the next part, our last part is, so there's that scripture that when the enemy comes in like a flood, God lifts up his standard. And that is one thing that I can say for over the last 2 decades, I've been working on just creating a new standard. And if it's the standard that shames and pushes everything else to the side. And so allow me just for a second. Here's that house we saw in Maryland. It was $55,000, right? So let's say here I am, I come and check out the bones, the infrastructure, and I put in about $45,000. $45,000 into a home is significant improvements. So you could really, really upgrade that house, especially if you get laborers that, like Habitat for Humanity, you get sweat equity, you get people who know how to do it. People get paid a fair wage, a livable wage, We do up the house. It's beautiful. The house is now, after you put all the money in it, it's $100,000. Well, whoever put that $55,000 in and then that $45,000, you want to get that money back. However, you also want to make a profit. So I believe that we should make a profit. I'm not opposed to making a profit. So let's say I just tack on $50,000. That off every house, I'm just going to make $50,000. I don't need to make $300,000 off of every house. $50,000 is good. It covers my costs. It pays for my staff. It keeps us in business, completely content. I have a home for $150,000. That I can say to any single parent or someone that fits the income qualification, I could say, hey, here's a house for $150,000. Now, if you went for a mortgage, I believe you would only have to make possibly $30,000 to $40,000 to afford a home like that. And so that's the kind of model that we really need to be developing. And so for the $150,000 house, here we have, we could put a Section 8 family in there, right? And then not only put a Section 8 family in there, but we could do a seller finance. Can we learn that in real estate class? Seller finance, meaning I don't have to go to the bank to get a mortgage to buy this house. The person who's selling the house can just do and finance it themselves. So you don't even need mortgages. People just have mortgages just because that's just the way we've been trained. Because if you think about it, your house was $150,000. I remember my mom's, she bought a house years ago, $50,000. But after the mortgage, and if you ever missed the payment and that interest, you wind up paying $200,000-$300,000 for the house. So you would have paid for the house 4 or 5 times over. Then when you get your quote, quote, equity, that's never really yours. The equity is supposed to be what you build. That's what the American dream was all about. Buying your house, having your equity, take your equity out, fund your small business, fund the kids' college. But the equity is not yours because you got to ask the bank for the equity. And if you don't have good credit, you ain't even getting your equity out your home that you quote, quote, own. So now you have to take the money back out. So I would not give that model to any family because I love them. I won't put them on a pathway to bondage. And so we would do a seller finance, and you live in the house after 10 years, your rent would have paid the mortgage 4 or 5 times over. We deed the house back to you. It's just that simple. We deed the house. So in 10 years, you own the house because it was kind of like a rent with option to buy. But rather than be that specifically, we decided to finance it ourselves. And that's what I want us to kind of think about, other options. You don't have to go get a mortgage. Landlords, you can do the financing yourselves. And this is the standard. If you say you love God and country and man, you love, this is how you show love. Love is an action word. This is how you show your love one for another. And I'm hoping that the model in itself, let other people use the model, like just do it. There's housing here. It's available on HUDhomes.com, and other cities and states, they have houses, jurisdiction, government owns property. And you could sell them the property yourself. And if you chose to put a small interest on it, you could do that too.
Absolutely.
You could
Let me say this. I think we really have to go back and, like we say, perception is a powerful thing. Propaganda is even more powerful. And I think the America sold this dream about home ownership and all of the things that it could, it could advance. However, they didn't tell us how they got to the dream and or the reality of the dream. And so you're reaching, what they did is they placed an image before us to grasp that they deliberately didn't want us to get. And that is where we have to really begin to talk about definition, terminology, application. Once we redefine what they've done to us, then we start asking differently. Once you can detect that what has been done is a fraud or a deliberate discrimination, then we're no longer even asking for your interest rates. There's certain things that we no longer want to qualify for. There's certain things that you owe us. Because we're not talking about affordable housing. We're not talking about a crisis. And we're not even talking about home ownership. We're talking about defraud.
Yeah.
We're talking about defraud. So if I wanted to be in a house, an apartment, a condo, or a cardboard box, you owe what you owe back to us. So I'm not even asking, I could care less if you ever had an interest rate. Now we have to talk about what was really done. Once we talk about what was really done versus what is propagandized, then we begin to ask differently for repairs. And you don't ask for interest, a good interest rate, when someone owes you something. You don't ask for.
And I don't think, and that's why I'm really appreciative, because when God said start the podcast, I was like, okay, we've been trying to do podcasts world for like 3-4 years, but it really never was it never really was time. And so now that he is giving us the go ahead, we know that it's time to start to break the thoughts piece by piece. You're going to listen to different parts of this, and you're going to hear different things, and let your spirit man, unveil to you what truth is for you, whatever part of that is. But without the sound, without us hearing another perspective, how will we ever grow or change the thought pattern? Just like with the George Floyd, enough was enough, and then all of this stuff started to happen, and now the statues is falling into the rivers and the little lakes. So this is the time to start to break those thoughts that we've been fed for years.
Yes. And the application of those thoughts, because people become a product of their environment. And if you've heard these terms over and over and over again, it almost looks as if there are two Americas. One that a population understands and can operate in, and then another who is trying to obtain the same thing, but they're not hearing it the same way. So you wonder, how did they build this wealth? What did they hear that we didn't hear? Or how did it come across to us when it came across the airwaves? What kind of ground were we where we didn't get the memo? Were we not here? Did we miss the meeting? We're sitting in the same places. Have they been groomed a certain way? What is it that we're not getting the message? What are we getting what are they getting that we're not getting? And so, obviously there have been some kind of land of the lay long before we got in this game. And I attribute this to colonialism, because colonialism deals not only with the advancement of white supremacy, but it also is a direct damager to Black lives. Like, you have to go on an assault charge. You have to be charged with assaulting Black lives and promoting white supremacy. And I believe colonialism has done exactly that, which takes this on a deeper level. Somebody may say, well, white people are poor. But if white people are, and you can say some Black people are rich, but we do know in America, you can be a rich man and white supremacy will still take you down. Not because you're rich, but because they can.
So let's keep it, because you could go real deep, you go all the way in, and I hope people are ready to start peeling those levels. But I know that we're just about, our time is there. We're at our hour. And so what we'll do with the podcast is we'll divide it into 4 different sections, upload it to the podcast world. We're still learning this technology. So, I love the way you look over there, Kimmy. You look so good. I like it. The purple. I got the blue over here. So I don't know if anybody has any questions based off of the things that we've said. I know we're streaming live on Facebook. I know this is the very first live podcast out there. But I do want us to at least start to, in our quiet time, just stop saying, we have an affordable housing issue. Don't say it anymore. Just purpose your heart to not say it anymore, and say, yes, I know we have a different issue. Whether you want to call it love, a heart issue, we have a different issue. And maybe you don't know how to do your work in your world, knowing that. And I guess that's just, it's a standard. It's just, it's like I showed you, the housing is there. HUD has the housing. Maybe demand HUD to give the housing, and maybe, demand housing authorities to first go to the HUD inventory. Let's demand banks to start using the vouchers for home ownership. Those are some things that we could do. We could just open this up a little bit more and let it, and it doesn't have to be as catastrophic as it is, as stressful as it is. And then maybe residents just standing up. I believe in the scripture, Proverbs 29:2, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, the people mourn and go into hiding. And so I feel like this is the time where we would want to come out of hiding.
Raquel, we do have, before we close, we do have a question from, what about mental health obstacles, from George Hoffman. Thank you, George, for chiming in. He also asked about, what about life changes, etc., insurance.
That insurance is a whole nother.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But let me, and I know you're going to take that mental health piece, but I do want to let you know that mental health, some people are born with mental health issues for sure. But a lot of the stuff, because I was a single mom myself, I was on welfare, and I know what that system did to me. It almost made me lose my mind, on the brink of suicide and murdering my sons. I was not healthy. And I know that there was a point in time where I wanted to give up. I wanted to quit. I was defeated. And if not, God stepped in, I would have been defeated. So sometimes the pressures of life can cause mental health. It can cause you to black out, like just disconnect. And that is actually, come on now, look at how much mental health issues or things we have promulgated through poor communities. It's you, like, for example, I got some senior citizens in one of the communities here in DC. They some of them have amputees because they're diabetic, but they got to go to bed every night, and they sleep with their canes just to rid off the rats that crawl in their bed at night. So you talk about mental health. If I had to go to sleep and sleep with a cane and had to fight rats off in my sleep, I'm not even getting proper rest. I am a disorder. I'm a disorder. And so sometimes, like that Charles Darwin scripture, if the misery of the poor be not caused by nature, but by our institutions, then great is our sin. A lot of our mental health issues can be resolved if we just loved each other and provided, versus obstructive barriers and destructive patterns in front of people, that we actually alleviated them and made sure that people had access to decent, safe, quality of life. I mean, I think that would resolve a lot.
Well, here's the thing. As a teacher, I'm always having to do stats and looking at the lay of the land, or who has been affected. And of course, you can look at, other minorities, quote unquote, such as your Asians or your Indian population. And I'm not talking about Native American. We're talking about the Indians from India. Or you can just look, and even though they're here, they represent less than 1% of mental health. Is it because they've never been affected by racism or classism, or did they come over here with a clean slate and they've been able to build ever since? Are their children locked away and they're upset? Are they defrauded medical coverage, or are they facing some of the things that we have been in this, in this fight for over 400 years? We, along the way, we're not just fighting for our rights, but we're also fighting for our mental health stability as we fight for things that should have been, given to the average human. So even as a teacher, how many Black kids are labeled as development delay or mental? We have so many different issues, and I do agree. I do believe there are some true mental health issues, but we really have to put those in perspective. If we can minimize the injustices, we can streamline those that really have mental health issues, and not create crises. I think we are creating crises by having a problem with affordable, quote unquote, affordable housing, or not enough cut.
Even with the incarceration, like
Yes.
Shakita was just saying, she said just hearing the rats crawl in her walls
Yes.
drive her insane.
Yes,
That
yes.
does something. It chips away at a piece of who we are. And so when you are a Black man or any man, I don't care what color you are, you go ahead and have your way obstructed on every front. You will go crazy. You will snap. You will say, listen, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. And you'll probably smoke weed. You'll probably do some damn drugs, some mushrooms, some acid, some cocaine, some crack. You'll do anything to numb the pain, to let them, because the pain is saying, I love Kanye's, yay, Kanye for president, yay. But I love when he said, we probably spend it all because the pain ain't cheap. It's pain. And
Right.
I gotta numb this pain. And how I numb this pain might be through sex, food, alcohol, drugs, beating on my woman, whatever.
And let me say this. Once you start hearing, because remember, we go to church because we have a kindred spirit. Whatever you're going through, I'm going through, we share that pain alike. We all take it to Jesus in prayer. But then you also talk about a Kanye West or a rapper who then they talk about, I grew up in the projects, or, my mother was smoking drugs. You start talking about that and you sing about it, then it becomes bearable. Like, I came up. So it almost helps you numb the pain. If you can sing about it a little bit, you can dance about it, you can repeat the lyrics, and then you have another 50 rappers that'll, talk about it, then we've normalized our suffering. We never address why we're suffering. We never address how we got there. We're so busy glamorizing the suffering or making this trophy out of, look where I came from and look where I am now, that we never say, now, wait a minute, that was engineered. We really wasn't supposed to go through that. That was totally engineered by somebody who is much more savvier at this here capitalism game. I shouldn't even have to sing that song.
You shouldn't have to. But unfortunately, that's our time. I love the question, George and Shakita. Thank you so much.
Yes,
and I wanted, he did say something, I know that life in itself will bring you changes. Life in itself, tomorrow, it has its own problems already. But the problems don't have to be self-inflicted or inflicted by my brother. It don't have to come from you or you or you or you. It could just be because life is designed to bring both trial and tribulation, to purify us by fire. So it has in itself built in its own mechanisms to make us stronger and better. And, there's that scripture that says that a poor man's crops will yield many, meaning even a poor person, the poorest person knows how to feed themselves. They know how to sow seed. They know how to make their way prosperous. But injustice comes and it just sweeps it all away.
That's what the scripture says.
That's the scripture. So, if you haven't, this is a secret, if you haven't recognized the times, somebody said, I heard on the radio, there was like Kanye running for president is a sure sign of the apocalypse coming up. But if this is the time, y'all, so the warnings are coming. Like this is straight dialogue, straight iron sharpens iron, precept by precept, brick by brick. We are building this new way of thinking, this new way of living, just moment by moment, right before our eyes. So thank you guys for joining us. It is now time to part. Every Tuesday at 7 a.m. we'll be live on, I don't know, Facebook Street. I don't even know. We still learning out this technology. We pardon us for showing up late to the whole entire scene. But they say better late than never, right? See, Kimmy? Thank you guys for tuning in.
Yes,
see you next week.